Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Cardboard Dragon Reviews, the video review series designed to teach you a board game as if you're sitting at the table with me, as well as to provide a review on that game in hopes of helping you decide if that game is right for you. Today we're taking a look at a hot new game. This is Mysterium, and this is a cooperative board game for 2 to 7 players. It takes about 30 to 45 minutes to play and is recommended for ages 10 and up. So in this game, one of the players is going to be taking on the role of a ghost who's haunting this mansion on the cover, and all of the other players are going to be taking on the roles of paranormal investigators who have come to the house to try and get rid of the ghost, but realize while they're there that the reason the ghost can't leave is because he's been wrongly accused of murder and cannot rest. So by working together, the ghost and the paranormal investigators will try to uncover the true crime, which will let the ghost finally rest. So let's go ahead and let's teach you how to play Mysterium. Alright, so just to start off here, I have the Ukrainian version of Mysterium. There's a Polish version, there's an Italian version, and hopefully sometime this year there will be an English version. But since I have the Ukrainian version, I'll be teaching you the Ukrainian rules. But I believe with the other versions you can still play this way if you find it better. I like this version of the game better than the other rule sets. So to start out, the first thing we need to do is decide who's going to be the ghost. So in this scenario here, I will go ahead and be the ghost. And then we need to give each player a colored disc and a crystal ball in their color. Now, I'm going to set this up for a 2-player game. And in a 2-player game, the paranormal investigator player controls 2 different crystal balls. So that's why they have a red and a blue one out there. Okay, and as the ghost player, we need to have 2 different piles, and we need to have where we're going to put cards, and we need to identify which is the red players and which is the blue players, and if we had more players, the green players and the yellow players, and so on. My suggestion to you is you pick up some kind of card holders, or if you have them already, you go ahead and use them for this game. It makes the game a lot easier, so you don't have to keep flipping over cards and looking over and over. The ghost also needs to get this calendar, which comes with the game, numbered 1 through 7, and it's a week, Monday to Sunday. And then you need some sort of markers. The game doesn't provide you with any. I just use these cheap melted marbles I've had since forever, and set those on the calendar. Now I'll talk about what those do later. Now, Ghost also needs to shuffle up and take these cards. These are dream cards. I'll get into these in a minute as well. So to begin the game, you have basically 3 decks of cards. You have people cards, you have location cards, and you have weapon cards. Kind of similar to how Clue works. You also have an identical deck that's in a green color for each of these decks that have the exact same cards in them, and that's important. But what we need to do first is we need to lay out our suspects, our potential locations, and potential weapons that were used in the true crime that happened. So we are going to lay out 5 cards here, 5 people, then 5 locations, then 5 weapons. The number of cards you lay out on normal difficulty is equal to the number of players playing the game plus 3. And remember to include the ghost in that. So this is just you and me playing, 2 of us, plus 3. So we'll lay out 5 cards on the normal difficulty. You can increase or decrease that if you want to adjust the difficulty per your liking. But let's go ahead and lay out 5 cards here. Okay. So these are the 5 potential suspects, 5 people who may have done the actual murder instead of me who was framed for it. Then we need to lay out 5 location cards. And again, you shuffle these decks up randomly and just assign them out here. So these are the potential places where the murder could have occurred. Okay, and then with these decks, once you're done laying them out, you don't need them for the rest of the game. So you can set those to the side. Then we need to get our weapons, and same thing, 5 weapons need to come out. Shuffle these up and deal them out. Okay. And then all the players can help, and it reduces the amount of time that it takes. And this is kind of a bit of an annoying part of the game, but if everybody's helping, it's not too hard. What the ghost needs to do is take the matching other colored deck. So in this case, all the cards down here are brown backed. So they need to take the ghost, and the other players need to take the green deck, and then find every one of these people, every one of these places, and every one of these weapons. So they're essentially matching, making a matching set. So I've just done that to save time. But for instance, here's this guy, you know, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we create matching decks for the ghost of the people, the places, and the weapons. Then other players can't be involved in this. This is up to the ghost. The ghost shuffles these, and he picks one person, sets the excess aside, one place, sets the excess aside, and one weapon for each player. Okay. So if you had more players, you would have more of these sets of 3. But because we're only playing with 2 players, we only have 2 sets. So the ghost has, for the red player, one of these people, one of these places, and one of these weapons. And the same for the blue player. So what the ghost is going to attempt to do is communicate to the matching player what their person is, what their place is, and what their weapon is. Except the catch of this game is the ghost can't talk at all during the game. The only way they can communicate is with these dream cards. I'll show you one of these here. They're these kind of weird, surreal, I guess you could say, art cards. And they're very reminiscent of Dixit. If you ever played Dixit before, these kind of style of cards will look familiar to you. Trying to get a darker one here to show you. I mean, the art is a little more dark than what's in Dixit typically, but there's a lot going on in these pictures. There's a lot of different things you could see in them. So as a ghost player, you need to shuffle these up, and then you need to draw 7 of them. Okay. 6 and 7. So now what you need to do is you're going to give 1 or more cards to one of the players, and you're trying to tell them about what person they have. You don't worry about the location and the weapon yet, only the person. So you do it in the order that we've laid them out on the table. So for red, I'm trying to get red to match this person that I have here, and they're one of the 5 that's on the table. So I could give red a card. And I'll give red this card here. Okay, so I've given that to red. I could have given them more cards, but generally in this game, the more cards you give people, the more you're going to confuse them. So I've given that to red. Now I get to redraw back up to 7 cards, and then I have to give this other player here, blue, 1 or more cards to try and tell them about what person they have. And while I'm doing this, these 2 players can be talking to each other and trying to figure out what card I'm trying to tell them about. They might notice things in this card. Like you can see there's plates in there, there's some kind of bugs, there's a red string, a bunch of little things in there. Now, as a ghost player, what these 3 markers here represent is a number of times I can throw my entire hand away and pick up 7 new cards. I can do this whenever I want during the game. I could spend them all on one turn if I felt like it. And that's one way you can change the difficulty, and I think probably the best way to do it as you get better at this game is to limit the number of times people can do this. So for instance, I don't like the cards in my hand that I have. There's nothing I think really tells blue about what person they have. So I'm going to go ahead and spend one of these. So I just throw it to the side, discard my entire hand, and draw a new 7. Okay. So this isn't a whole heck of a lot better, but I'm going to give this to blue. Sorry, and this is the card I've given blue. Okay. Set that in front of him. And remember, during this time, I, as the ghost, can't say anything to these people. I can't hint that they're on the right track while they're deliberating what person they think they have. Can't say anything to them. So now they need to work together and figure out which people each of them have. So, and when they've decided, they put their marker on top of the person. Like that, for instance. But since this is a game in which it works out, let's see if you can figure it out, what I gave these people. I'm going to show you each of these people, and then I'll show you the dream cards once more, and then you can see what it's kind of like to play this game. And remember, this is only a 2-player game, so you would be the only one deliberating in your head what person, place, and location you had. So here we have this soldier kind of gentleman here. Okay. Here we have, appears to be a nun. Here we have, appears to be a tailor. Here we have, this lady appears to be a shopkeeper. And then this gentleman is a fisherman. And you'll notice in these cards there's a lot of detail. So there's little things you might need to pick out of them. I mean, the cards I've given you could be something as simple as the colors are the same, or it could be the smallest minute detail. So let me show you these dream cards. This is blue. Okay. And this is reds. Okay, so which person do you think each of them had? Let's go to the red player, and let's say the red player noticed that there was a red string in that picture, and that's what they picked up on, and they said, huh, it's kind of like the tailor. And the other player, the blue player, said, I don't know what this is. There's some water here and a whale, so maybe it's the fisherman. Or maybe it's some weird symbol for heaven because they're flying through the sky. So let's go with the nun. So when players do this, you confirm with them as a ghost. That's your final selections. They say yes. And then you go through looking for correct answers. So I looked for red. Red picked the tailor. Did red have the tailor? Yes, they did. So I can take their card and I can put it down in front to signify they got it right and I'm telling the truth. That was the correct connection. And you can give red their figure back. You can remove this card from the game. And the dream card goes away. Now we look at the blue player. They picked the nun. Does blue have the nun? No, blue does not have the nun. So they take their figure back, and they get to keep their dream card to try and build on the dreams together to see what similarities they have. So normally you wouldn't say this. You don't tell people what the correct answer is, but I'll tell you now, it was the fisherman was the correct answer for blue. Okay. So once you complete a round, whether people were right or wrong, you move the time track on the calendar here ahead another day. When it gets to the end, you move from the 6th to the 7th day, there's one more round in the game. And if people haven't completed the game by then, the game is over and the players have lost. But we would advance to 2. At this point as a ghost, I'm giving red cards that try and match their location now. They've solved their person, they move on to location. And once they solve their location, they will then move on to trying to solve their weapon. Okay, and blue is still trying to solve their person. That's okay if you're at different places trying to solve between the other players. But blue needs to still figure out their person. So I can give them, it doesn't matter also what order I give people cards in. I could give blue a card first this time instead of red. It's up to me how I want to do that. So again, I would look through these cards. I would try and find a location now for red and a location now for blue. So let's say after a whole bunch of turns run, everybody's solved their stuff. Okay. And then these would all be gone away, as would any dream cards. And this is the end of the game that I'm about to show you. And you can play along again too if you would like. So this is a little bit of a weird thematic thing happening here. Kind of a disconnection almost in a way. What is about to happen is these separate sets, one was blues, one was reds, and we'll keep them marked as this was reds and this was blues. As the ghost, I look at my hand of cards, and I can discard them still if I have more tokens. But I take a look and I decide which one of these scenarios is the true crime that happened. I get to pick that. That's kind of weird thematically. Maybe the ghost had some sort of an epiphany, and through working with the investigators and spending more time thinking about it, realized it was one or the other. So I get to pick which one I want it to be by looking at my hand of cards and deciding what matches. I have to lay down 3 cards. And I can never add any more cards to that. I still can't talk. They have to pick which one is the right scenario. Now, if you have more people, let's say you had a third pawn out here, there would be 3 different scenarios. You could have up to 6 investigators. So you could have 6 scenarios to go through with only 3 cards. So let's take a look here and see if I have anything that great to pick one scenario over the other. I'm going to throw my cards away, because I don't like that. And boy, this is the trouble as a ghost. You might have things that don't really match, and you have to somehow come up with things in your head that make them match, and you hope that other people see them. Sometimes they're going to be very literal, and other times they'll be really weird kind of symbols or metaphors that you understand in your head, but the other players might not. So as an example, I'm going to lay these 3 cards out, and I can throw my cards away. I'm done at this point playing this game. But before I lay these out, I would take the 2 other symbols that were marking which card holders I was using, and I would flip them over so the other players can't see, and I would pick the correct color that I want it to be here, and I put that one on top face down. Now these players need to deliberate. Which set is it here? And these are the cards that I gave. There's kind of a bear, and I don't know if that's an owl inside, and they're reading. There's this chimney sweep who's flying through the air. This kind of house with this web thing between some trees. And then the players have to decide which set of cards it is based on these cards. So we have the red set. I'll show you all the cards that are in the red set, so you can play along if you would like. And here's the weapon. Good old frying pan. And then we have, of course, the fisherman we got from the first round. Room here. And we have a rope. Classic rope. And now you have to decide which one of these is the correct one, and you work together with your partner, if you have one, and make a decision. If when you make your decision, you put both your characters on the pile, and then the ghost tells you if you're wrong or if you're right. If you're wrong, you would throw all these cards out, and then you would continue deliberating on the other possible scenarios. But the time track still moves ahead another day. So if you were wrong on the last day, you would lose the game then. But if you had time, like if we're here and we got this wrong, we still have time to make another guess. And if we manage to do this by the sixth day, where there are only 2 scenarios left, we're guaranteed to win. There are times, though, you might mathematically eliminate yourself way earlier because you haven't got anything right. So if you're wrong, again, you move the time track ahead still, and you throw away those cards, and then the investigators deliberate the remaining scenarios. The ghost doesn't get to adjust anything here, add any cards, or say anything. Now, if you are right, so it was blue that I was going with, because the bear for the polar bear, and this dude looks like the fisherman, and the rope for this ropey thing between the trees there. If they're right, you flip over the top one of these, and it needs to match color. So you're not cheating. You're not being like, yeah, you were right, even though they were wrong. You can see they matched. That was the one that I picked. And that's how you play Mysterium. There's not really anything else to add. Just a reminder with these, you can use them at any time. You can use them all in the same turn if you want to. But once they're gone, they're gone. And that's a good way to change the difficulty. And you can also adjust the difficulty by adding or removing cards in the lines here. Alright, so that's how you play Mysterium. Let's go ahead and give you my final thoughts. Oh hey, final thoughts here on Mysterium. This game is excellent. Anytime I play this with people, they always want to play again. I bet I've played this game at least 24 times, and I've owned it for a month. I mean, that's great value. And that's one thing I'll say here. This game isn't available in English. I was able to get my copy off eBay. I hear you can order them through the publisher if you'd like to. But it was well worth the extra, maybe $15 that I had to pay for shipping compared to what a normal board game would cost, because I played it so much. You play this game once, nobody I've ever played it has said, oh, let's not play that again. Everybody loves it, absolutely loves it, with the exception of one individual who's kind of lukewarm on it. But everybody else just wants to play again and again. Again, I probably play this 24 times in a month because we play multiple times in a night. The artwork on these cards is awesome. And there's so many details in these cards for you to see. And when this game is at its best is when things aren't so literal as a bear to a bear, as I gave you in the blue example. It's when you're making more abstract connections, when you have less cards to pull from, when your cards are bad. That's when this game is at its best. And you're trying to get on the same page as the ghost, and the ghost is trying to give hints that don't lead you in the wrong direction. So it's really interesting that way. And the art cards can be a problem. If you are hard of sight, you have trouble seeing, it might be difficult for you to play this game, especially if you're playing with a lot of people and there's a whole bunch of cards out, because there's tiny little details on these cards that might make the difference between a win and a loss and picking the right card or not. But overall, this game is just excellent. It's very easy. There's hardly anything to really teach anybody if they're playing on the other side of the table. They just need to match. That's all it is a matching game, but you really have to think to be able to match properly. And then usually those people, once they play once, then they're able to be the ghost. And that's when the game is most interesting for me, is when new players play as the ghost. Because then there's no pre-established connections between cards and what certain cards mean. And don't mean. And that's one of my kind of complaints with the game, I guess, is there's just not enough cards. And it's probably because I played so much. But, like, for instance, my wife and I have played this game an absolute ton. But there's certain card combinations we have put together and we remember us using before, that when we see that combination, we know exactly what the other person is talking about and what they're hinting at. So here's an example right here. We have these sharp tools in the shed, and to us, when we see that matched, we, in the barbers on the table, we know that those go together because we've made that connection before. And that's tough. If there are more cards, that would be harder to make those pre-established connections. And if you're playing with new people, those don't exist, so that problem doesn't exist. And another way to limit that problem is to let the person discard less times. But that's still a bit of an issue in the long term. And again, I play this game so many times, I already feel I've got my money worth out of it. My money's worth, I should say. But so for me, it's a 9 out of 10 just because of that reason. That eventually I might not want to play this. And again, the Board Game Geek scale, a 10 is something you think you will always want to play, and that's never going to change. I could see that changing. Now, hopefully expansions come out for this. I know they're talking about an English version. I would hope, for me personally, that the expansion would fit in with a copy of the game I have, but that might not happen. But even in the package that it is, this game is just awesome. It is so much fun. Again, we play this like, we play it so everybody playing gets to be the ghost at least once. So much fun. So I highly recommend Mysterium if you can pick it up. This, again, is the Ukrainian version. I got this off of eBay, but there's a Polish version you can get, and there's an Italian version, and there's supposed to be, hopefully, an English version in 2015. And I really hope that happens so that this game gets the exposure it deserves. Awesome game. People say Clue meets Dixit. Sort of. There's no board, there's no roll and move, but there is murder, so in that way it's kind of like Clue. But definitely reminds me of Dixit, if you played Dixit before. So yes, 9 out of 10, Mysterium, highly recommended. This has been Chris from Cardboard Dragon Reviews, and until next time, keep your dice on the table.